Hello, and welcome to Ethos-Driven Leadership Framework, Reimagining Leadership by Prioritizing Authenticity, Wellness, and Belonging. My name is Nafisa Hood, a Black mental wellness mentee who will be supporting this session today. I would like to introduce our speaker, Dawn Christian. She's a CEO and founder of Belong by Dawn Christian. She's an authority in fostering belonging and inclusive leadership with an MBA from Cornell University and a BA in sociology from the University of California and at Berkeley, and a diversity and inclusion leadership certificate from Cornell University International Labor Relations School. She's also a visionary in fostering a sense of belonging through her expert guidance in Belonging Plus ideas initiatives by consulting effective leaders/teams using her ethos-driven leadership principles and creating organizational cultural strategies. Please join me in welcoming Dawn Christian.
Hi, everyone. I am so honored to be here and with the intentionality of this space to prioritize Black wellness. I am Dawn Christian. We are going to have a bit of a conversation today on this platform. I can't see all of your faces, so Nafisa is going to graciously help me connect with you while we go through things. But I am going to be engaging with you, speaking to you, asking questions, asking for you to explore through your lived experiences and your presence today. So if we could agree to do that, we're in good shape. So she may interject from time to time just so that we can check in on the chat, questions that we're seeing. And I welcome you. And Nafisa, I ask for your help for this too. When I'm pausing and asking for questions, if you would like to come on mic and to say them out loud or put them in chat, whatever you are comfortable in doing, I welcome and am excited to have you do that. But let's dive right on in. We are going to be talking about ethos-driven leadership. And this is a proprietary framework that I've developed here at Belong by Dawn Christian. The brand B leadership that you see is the arm of our organization that counsels, coaches, and advises organizations and individuals to develop belonging as a leadership competency. So we will dive into that a bit through our experience. But more specifically, we are going to be talking about reimagining leadership by prioritizing authenticity, wellness, and belonging. And what does that really mean, and why is it even relevant when we think of Black mental wellness? Well, we have to reimagine what leadership is because in a colonized world, we've been told that leadership had nothing to do with our identity. So we're just going to start there. And then we're going to dig into how do we, in our Blackness, in our Black experiences, prioritize authenticity to cultivate wellness and establish a sense of belonging. Now, there's a sense of exchange here. There's an onus that is not all ours because we are part of societies, larger societies, smaller ones, workspaces, family dynamics. And so I am intentionally centering our self-discovery so that we can have the empowerment to heal from within first, to set an expectation and a standard for how it is that we will claim and create belonging with our organizations and our other relationships. So let's get into that. My bio's been read. You've heard all the things that I do. But I will just call out here that we're here to be who we are. Our agreements are to be intentional and focused in this space. Be here, be present for yourself, and to examine what the ethos-driven leadership framework is and its relationship to belonging as a leadership competency, and what does that mean for leadership? And spoiler alert, I'm going to be who I am. So you're going to see reflections of myself throughout this presentation. And part of the identity that I'm bringing to you is, yes, my Blackness, yes, my womanness, yes, me as a family person, wife and mother, sister, aunt, cousin, all of those things I'm bringing to the table, along with the things that you heard in the bio, because authenticity requires us to show up fully. So I'm doing this to demonstrate and practice exactly what I coach. Be who you are. When we talk about claiming and creating spaces, that's an exchange. And it is, yes, a slogan that we say here at Belong by Dawn Christian, a tagline, but it's an intentional one. To claim space means to declare that you, not only that it's yours, but you have every right for it to be your space, the way it needs to be your space. And creating is about, as leaders, cultivating a space where belonging can thrive. And together, we're going to do this in exchange, in a covenant. We're going to co-create this experience and build it together. Okay. So our learning outcomes: to identify and prioritize self-discovery actions, most important to prioritizing wellness as a leader. As leaders, we're often pouring from our cups and not necessarily prioritizing us in that exchange. Leadership is an ecosystem. I'm not going to say that there's work-life balance, but I do believe in work-life integration. And I do believe that in order for us to have anything to pour out, we also have to be pouring in. And that is where wellness is prioritized. To unite by understanding the interdependencies of self-awareness, self-care, and establishing belonging as a leadership competency. What does that mean? Often when we do our pulse surveys at work, where a lot of folks hear the term belonging and even get a sentiment of what it means in the context of organizations, we're thinking about what it feels like. But again, we are claiming and creating our spaces. So what does it mean to systemically cultivate, to put the practices and policies in place as a leader to foster that belonging, to prioritize humanness and wellness while leveraging authenticity to foster trust as a Black or BIPOC leader? We'll map our ethos, and ethos is a term meaning your values, actions, and accountabilities for next level leadership. Everybody good with that? Sound about right? I can't see you, so I'm just going to assume there are head nods and that we are going to move right on along. How are we doing? All good in the chat?
It's doing good. They have a thumbs up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So before we dive in, and because we are prioritizing wellness, I want us to begin with a mindfulness moment. So if you're with me and you'd like to just take a moment, and if it's helpful for you to close your eyes, to just maybe move back from the screen, but to truly hear as I read these words from Cleo Wade. Oftentimes, when the world feels chaotic, we begin to feel as if it's somehow inappropriate to have joy. Have your joy. When we have joy, especially in the midst of challenging times, we are saying to the world, I will define the current state of the world around me, instead of it allowing it to define me. I'm going to say that one more time. When we have joy, especially in the midst of challenging times, we are saying to the world, I will define the current state of the world around me, instead of allowing it to define me. Today, regardless of what is happening, empower yourself by embracing your joy. You deserve joy. How are we feeling? How does that feel to hear that you have the power, that you have the ability to define the current state of the world around you? thinking of all the ways in which we got here today, the news we may have watched this morning, things that may have been said to us over our lifetime. What does it feel like to reclaim your joy? I'll take a moment and would love to hear any reflections.
One of the participants said, very needed with all the sadness and upheaval right now.
Yes. And that doesn't mean we're not allowed to be sad. It doesn't mean that we're not allowed to feel the weight. But it does mean that we can contextualize and spend some time in the healing space to reconvene with joy. And again, that is Cleo Wade from her, I think it's her latest book, Heart Talk. So I said we're going to claim and create this space together. So we have a few agreements that we need to make. And these are some that I've come up with on my own, but I'm going to ask for a covenant today. That we will lean into our vulnerability, that we will develop trust. I will not declare a safe space, but I will earn it through demonstrating that I want to preserve psychological safety, that I too am being vulnerable, that I am willing to accept and create a space where you can show up as you are, just as much as I thrive to show up as I am, and thus trust can be cultivated. Well, we respect one another and our differences. As we go through this, there may be some things that you don't agree with, don't align with, haven't experienced. But perhaps we unpack as leaders what that disagreement is, where it lives, and disagree with the statement or the concept, but not necessarily the person that brought it forth. Because we're all representations of this world that we share. And that will be in communication. While I'm your facilitator today, none of this is worth the time if we're not in communication together. So whether that's coming on mic or using the chat or having that introspective communication, communicate and check in. And before we move forward, I'd like to ask 2 questions. Does this sound about right? Sound good for everyone? Comfortable? Maybe not so comfortable, and that could be a good thing too. We are here to stretch. And I'd like to ask another question. Is there anything else that is required to prioritize psychological safety and to create the space that you need to thrive during this session today? And I welcome those in the chat or otherwise. We all good?
Yes, everyone's doing pretty good.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. So one of our first questions is, how do we prioritize psychological safety? Here is one space designed for Black mental health and wellness. So maybe we're leaning in a little differently than we have in other spaces. But tell me, how have you done this in some other spaces? Maybe at work, maybe with your family, a significant other, a partner. What does that mean to be psychologically safe? I'll give one interpretation, and that means to be able to show up in presentation as you are, and in your thoughts, your ideas, and the way you communicate, why you believe what you believe, without the fear of retribution or somebody coming for you. So, in a lot of ways, psychological safety means it's okay for me to show up. Any other thoughts about the term psychological safety and what that means and how to prioritize it? And I told y'all we're going to be in communication, so I'm going to keep talking to you. Has anybody ever felt unsafe, psychologically unsafe? Sometimes to know what it is, we got to know what it's not. And what was that? What wasn't there when you felt psychologically unsafe?
Someone said showing up authentically with knowing that you are accepted is really important. And permission to make mistakes is also really important.
Fantastic point. A lot of lack of growth for self and for organizations because of a commitment to passing culture and wanting to fit in. And that limits us oftentimes from the innovative, inventive mindset because we want to be like others. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be called out in case, just in case, it might not work out. And for Black folks, and we'll get into this a little bit in our discussion, there is a unique relationship with that ability to show up and bring your full self and your ideas along with you. Any other thoughts in the chat? Thank you for sharing.
One of them said I wasn't allowed to raise my concerns. It made me feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else said permission to be honest.
Yes. 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 Permission to be honest. And how about even not needing permission to be honest, to just be, right? That's how I feel. And I can be honest because honesty is safe. Right? I don't need the permission. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for those reflections. Okay. Community and honoring diversity is a large part of psychological safety. And I've spent some time reflecting with some words from Bell Hooks, who, yes, is intentionally written with lowercase b and lowercase h, as she, rest in power, would have done herself. Beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation, by each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. Oftentimes, when we hear the term diversity, especially when we think about it in the context of the corporate world, we're thinking of it meaning those people over there, the Black, the brown folks, the neurodiverse, the LGBTQIA plus community, them over there, very othering. It's over there. But in fact, if you're breathing, you are diverse. Diverse means different. And beloved community is formed not by the eradication of these differences, but by its affirmation, allowing for that to not only be, but thrive. And each of us claiming our identities in their fullness and their cultural legacies, not forgetting from where we have come and what we are creating. This, in fact, creates unity for all of us when we're able to do this and foster psychological safety. But you need to show up. Again, it is not informed by the eradication of our differences, but by its affirmation. And that affirmation starts with us. You are part of unity. The you of it, your differences, your lived experiences, your background, and claiming it fully is a part of that. Here, and I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but this is our framework on belonging. And I'm going to take some notes from it, but you could see the skill sets here. And this is the foundation of where the ethos-driven leadership framework and competency has grown from. Belonging, in fact, requires awareness, transparency, trust, and cultural competency, and ethos, your values. Those are the required skills. But belonging, if I define it, and as we define it here at Belong by Dawn Christian, is when humanity is prioritized, identity and cultures are recognized, perspectives are honored, talents are valued, there's a sense of connectivity and purpose for each individual and their contributions. That fear of bringing that idea forward because maybe it might not make it, right? Moving away from that, each individual and their contributions, and that there is a shared accountability to equitable practices and policies. Accountability essentially is ownership and responsibility. Recognizing that you have a role and being responsible for it. Inclusion, inviting, honoring, accepting, and continuing to be open to the thoughts, ideology, and perspectives of everyone. Social impact, the awareness of the influence that decisions, resources, behaviors, values have in shaping society. All of our values and behaviors have a role in shaping society. Equity, often confused with equality, is the continuous and rigorous assessment of fairness, access, and power structures to strive for equality. Equity is the work en route to equality and often doesn't feel comfortable, especially for the privileged. Diversity, our differences, including identity, experiences, beliefs, and perspectives. So now that we have this kind of core ideology around belonging, we're now better suited to be aware, transparent, to build trust, to develop our cultural competency, and to not only identify our own ethos, but respect others as leaders. I'll pause momentarily for any thoughts, questions, or reflections before moving from this. Because again, this understanding of belonging, this particular framework, will be the foundation for ethos-driven leadership. Thoughts, reflections? Any aha moments there?
I definitely agree with you when you said respecting other people's ethos is also very important, not just yours, but understanding everybody else's opinions.
Yes. And its relationship to social impact and social constructs, right? Because what we value often informs how we move, how we interact with others, how we might include or not include, how we see what's seen as a contribution, a success or a failure. All of this being very connected in this word that we say very casually as belonging has a lot of tenets to it. Any other thoughts, perspectives on this?
One of them said, I see so many parallels in the belongingness as a core tenet to mental health and wellness for persons of African descent.
Yes. Because the opposite of belonging is otherness. And the one thing about belonging is that it is the basic human need. Right? You come into the world having a sense of wanting to belong. You might not understand the concept, but that is us needing hugs and touch, right? We've seen that study. The children that weren't hugged and touched didn't fare so well and didn't live as healthy, and some not as long even. If you've ever seen someone in the neonatal care center in an incubator, it's actively a part of the day to touch, to engage with those babies in those little, fiberglass bassinets, because it's that essential and cultivates, yes, your mental wellness and development, but also your physical. Okay. So I'm going to ask this question. This is about leadership, but what inspires you to lead? And leadership is not only a position, it can be an influence. We know this, right? We've known this for a while, that it is, in some cases, a construct of a structuring and a power dynamic in an organizational structure. But in fact, leaders have led with no titles for a very long time. Let's think about that. Think of someone, whether that's you or a moment in time or someone in our legacy. One might be Harriet Tubman, not even deemed a person, led herself and then hundreds more to freedom as a slave. Just some perspective. Okay. What inspires you to lead? Thoughts?
Nothing for right now.
Okay.
Somebody just said, leadership inspires me to build what I want to see for others.
So you're claiming and creating those spaces, right? Wanting to have an impact, wanting to create a space where maybe psychological safety is prioritized, wellness is prioritized, belonging is a function of the organization.
Someone else said wanting to see others be successful in their attempts to reach their career goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Empowering others is spiritual work.
Yes.
Sharing something I have learned to help others. Developing people and building capacity so the right folks are on the table or at the table.
All those things are so important, right? To understand our motivations for leadership and to continually connect with that inspiration. When leading, what are some challenges to creating unity, community, and connection that you have faced? What are some of those challenges? And let's get real with some of those challenges, right? What's made it hard to cultivate unity? Not eradicating our differences, but acknowledging them, living through them, valuing them.
Someone said challenges include ego, wanting to preserve white male power structures like hierarchy.
Yep.
Someone else said some people don't understand their needs. Someone else said everyone has their own agenda.
What are those needs that are not being understood? Let's go there. And anyone can comment, the person that put it there or anyone else. What are some of your needs that haven't been met that have allowed for you to unite or feel connected, a sense of community and connection, whether leading or being led?
They said trauma hinders growth.
Yes. And let's talk about that white male construct. Why is that so profound? We've said it, but what does that mean? Who's not included in just that word, white, or that term, white male construct? Well, if you're not white and you're not male, well, it means that leadership doesn't even look like you. So in fact, you could be inspired to lead, be striving to lead, be qualified to lead, but in fact, there's no space created for you to lead because you are not in its image. Anybody relate with that? Anyone ever been at a corporate event, seen a panel, and everyone essentially could be identified the same exact way? Middle-aged, white male, blue blazer, khakis. What does it feel like? What kind of secondary trauma could that potentially be to consistently see an image associated with an ideology of what it means to lead and then live in an identity that reflects none of what you're able to see?
One of them said inferior status has no voice towards the white male construct.
Mm-hmm.
Another one said intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators informs individual needs.
Yeah. Your needs won't be met in a space that's not built for you. You cannot unite, have a sense of connection and community with a group of folks that don't even realize that you're in the room. And over time, that tells you things about what's capable for you, what's in reach, what's attainable, that I'm not saying are true, but we start to believe them because we have actually practiced them ourselves. Anyone have heard the term culture fit and are starting to hear the migration to culture add? We've got a lot of leadership, a lot of senior leadership getting up on podiums and saying, bring your authentic self to work. But boy, what if that authenticity actually showed up? Are we ready? Are we ready for the pierced nose and the curly kinks and the way that I actually speak? Not only when I'm in front of you, but always? Am I allowed to talk about my family the way that you do? Are the systems in place for me and my needs to be met in a way that I can psychologically safely show up and talk about my regular day without wondering, did I say too much? The barriers to belonging in the landscape from a Black perspective. There are a lot of words here, so I'm going to take us through it, but these are important. This is from Korn Ferry, and it's from an article, When You Are the Only One. I could never be late. I could never miss an assignment. I could never make a mistake. This meant I had to be extra prepared and deliver documents of higher quality than anyone else. And this is a common experience for underrepresented groups. In Korn Ferry's 2019 report, The Black P&L Leader, Profit and Loss Leader, 57% of the Black leaders were interviewed said they have to work twice as hard and need to accomplish twice as much as their peers to be viewed as on the same level. The standards are higher for me, and the opportunities for do-overs that were dispensed freely to others were never available to me. While I was experiencing success, getting the job, in the position, I was exhausted. You're not well when you're exhausted, mentally or physically. The pressure to perform was stressful and overwhelming. I knew that I would eventually make that mistake because perfection is not possible. I was worried about what my colleagues would not only think of me, but also how this would negatively impact other underrepresented groups from gaining access into the spaces as well. So not only do I have to worry about me, your perception of me, but I got to worry about everyone else who might look something like me while doing twice as much, working twice as hard for half as much. And these are executive Black leaders, high ranking, still feeling this way in the position. Another perspective, the landscape, another Black perspective on loneliness. A Harvard Business Review study found that of first-generation professionals, while loneliness in the workplace impacts people from all racial and ethnic backgrounds, it affects underrepresented groups at a higher rate. 37% of Hispanic workers and 30% of African American workers said that they felt abandoned by their coworkers when under pressure at work, versus 25% of white workers who felt that way. Similarly, 39% of Hispanic workers and 30% of African American workers felt alienated from their coworkers, compared to 26% for white workers. Now, the CDC, the Center on Disease Control, has declared loneliness an epidemic. But when we parse it apart in our own identity, or intersectional identity at that, the gap is even wider. Belonging becomes the intervention. Belonging creates healthier individuals, and healthier individuals create healthier organizations. It is not just a passing thought to be seen and heard and valued at work. It is, in fact, essential for your health. To cultivate this, first, internally, and for our teams. And while this exists, the onus, again, does not lie strictly with the Black identity or the Hispanic identity or any other underrepresented group or marginalized group or othered group. But the awareness of it, and being aware of the spaces that we are either claiming or creating, showing up at, shrinking ourselves at, not checking in on whether or not this is actually a healthy space for me, and working actively to cultivate something else for self and for others, being able to speak up, right? You don't have to champion everyone, but you do have to champion yourself. And sometimes that is an auditory one, and sometimes it is the way that we move, right? Meaning having the awareness that we need to make a transition. Another perspective on barriers to belonging. What do Black executives really want? Many of the Black executives in our study told us that there was a huge chasm between the persona they put on at work, what the sociologist Irving Goffman described as the front stage, and their true selves, the backstage. Almost universally, interviewees said that they engaged in code switching, the concept of presenting someone other than your authentic self to make them comfortable in certain environments, usually at work. Black men in particular said that they had to soften their personalities lest they come across as angry. Consider Braden, who told us that as a 6 foot 1 inch tall, 180 pound Black man, he makes a point of smiling and appearing jovial and holding negative emotions in check at his large accounting firm. I've seen plenty of people express a lot of anger at work or frustration and yell or whatever their reaction is. And I don't feel like the same grace applies to someone like me, he explained. Also, Harvard Business Review. Who saw this?
To let you know you have 20 minutes. I want to make sure you know everything.
Great. Who saw themselves in that? Thank you. So now we're going to get into a perspective that I developed here at Belong by Dawn Christian that is centered in this idea of Black identity and joy. It really examines imposter syndrome versus value. Okay. A lot of belonging is about a sense of freedom, but freedom is in perspective and we must reclaim it. I'm going to take us a place that maybe will feel a little uncomfortable for some, because for some it has become comfortable to declare imposter syndrome. So we're going to work our way through this, okay? Imposter syndrome comes from a state of privilege, such as being provided access based on potential or likability rather than standardized qualifications or core competencies. Those behaviors and practices breed imposters. Black people, that's who I'm speaking to today, Black people, however, have societally been indoctrinated to believe they have less value, less worth. That false belief has an origin story rooted in colonization. I don't know who needed to hear that, and I don't know who it made comfortable or who it made comfortable. But let's continue. There is a distinct difference between imposter syndrome and being seen as a valuable contributor. When society has systemically and categorically undervalued our existence, it is not surprising that we as Black people can mistakenly associate it with imposter syndrome. Understanding this profound nuance sets us free and allows us to heal and cultivate joy by knowing our worth. Once we become rooted in our self-worth and recognize our value, we become free. Black people are not imposters. Black people are qualified. Black people are valued. And this knowing allows us to heal and cultivate joy, all by knowing our worth. That is offered by yours truly. We must know our value so that we can set aside this concept of imposter syndrome to create more space, to claim what we are, which is worthy. And just that shift, freeing yourself from the idea that there is something that you did not qualify from. The sheer impossibility that in those reflections that we saw earlier, you have to do twice as much to get half as far. How dare you think that you are not qualified? Be kind to ourselves, show ourselves compassion, and by all means, declare our worth. I offer to you a set of freedom to reclaim this idea that there is any imposter in you, but in fact that you are beyond worthy and qualified to lead, to be, and you are seen and valued. But first, you must know that. We need to build the trust and belonging by telling our stories. But first, we need to show them who we are and who we're working with. The code switching has to go. We can create unity through the telling of our stories, and that comes in multiple ways. It comes in the way we speak when we show up. It comes in the way that maybe we even dress. It comes in how we design our days and when we're available and when we are not. And it comes in, yes, talking about our weekends and what we did, unapologetically. And the healing begins because you are being authentic. And you are creating and claiming the space in these relationships that you have, that you belong there, that your Blackness, your identity, that intersectionality of it actually belongs in that space. But first we have to show them. And that builds trust. We trust ourselves, we trust one another, and then we start to build trust externally. What characteristics help you garner trust? I'm going to keep us going. As you think about that, please put them in the chat. If we get any reflections on what helps you garner trust, please offer them. But unity and belonging and the power of storytelling is so important. And I don't just mean creating some illustrative story, but talking about your origin story, sharing what it meant for you to come from here to here, so that the policies and practices can shift to understand your needs. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. You are a human. Stories can break the dignity of people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. Tell your story. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Excuse me. It's a wonderful TED Talk if you haven't seen her speak. So quickly in the chat, and I won't be able to see it, introduce yourself. How would you say who you are? Just tell us who you are. And Nafisa, if you can reflect a couple as they show up. Anything in the chat?
Nothing yet, but I don't mind introducing myself again.
Okay.
I'm Nafisa Hood. I come from an African background, and I definitely agree with the stuff that you were saying about having cultural competency is very important. Ethos is very important as well. I think incorporating diversity into the workplace is also very important.
Thank you for that. Any others? Okay. No worries. We're going to listen to Maya Angelou just for a moment.
To look at self-love.
Can you hear okay?
It is very important that
Yes,
it comes in, that you have a sense of yourself, so that when you walk into an office, you don't go alone. Bring your people with you. Bring everybody who has loved you with you. Say, Grandma, come on, let's go. Great-grandpa, you've been dead all this time. Come on, let's go. I have to go in here and have an interview. Come on, Auntie. Come on, my friends. Come, let's go. And when you walk in, people don't know what it is about you. They can't take their eyes off you. You may not be cute in the given sense. You may not be fashion model size in that particular sense. You may not be any of those things, but they can't take their eyes off you. And they say of you, in this incredible way, which I don't understand, they say, I don't know, but she has charisma. No, what you have is all those people around you. So think of that. Anytime you have anything to do, bring everybody with you that you can remember who has loved you. And then you have that sense of having been paid for. And when you walk in, people will say, now, I think you're overqualified. Yes, you will have that, but you'd have that anyway.
Bring them with you. All of them with you. Your culture, your ancestors, what they've strived for. Your worth is rooted in it. And I want to zone in on a term that she used, which she also used from the podium when she did the inaugural speech for Bill Clinton. That you have been paid for. Yes, that is a direct line to the colonization that's happened throughout the globe on us as Black people. It's already been paid for, so there is no reason for you to diminish who you are, what you're worth, and what you're already qualified to be, regardless of what society and societal practices and systemic trauma might be telling us. This departure from imposter syndrome is an intentional shift to develop your wellness and your sense of belonging in self, to start the healing process. The framework itself was created out of a love letter to myself. After 20-something odd years in corporate America, and this young man that I have upstairs, who I call Chase, he's my son, he's 6, I was in an executive leadership position, making a company billions of dollars a year, pregnant, geriatric pregnancy, with some complications. And I couldn't breathe and my child wasn't breathing. I was on my way to the emergency room. And I was supposed to be on a global call, and I texted my boss and said, hey, I can't be on that call. I'm on my way to the hospital. And he wrote back, can you send the PowerPoint before you go? That is the impetus for these questions. Your purpose is not your productivity, but it is what matters to you. Your needs, what motivates you. Your beliefs, what are your rooted beliefs? And some of them may be beliefs that we have no business believing, like being imposters, when in fact we are overqualified. Your influence, what holds you, who holds you accountable, including maybe your faith, including maybe the legacy you want to build, or the inspiration that you want to have, or the co-power that you want to build, the vision of something different. When we ask ourselves these questions, we start to understand our own ethos, our own values, and are driven to lead through them. By being authentic and removing the performative presentation of leadership and becoming belonging leaders. So, if you didn't introduce yourself in the chat or to yourself, reintroduce yourself and bring them with you. Bring these questions with you so that you can know exactly who you are, to build and cultivate that psychological safety, that vulnerability, and that trust that you seek and need. And so that you can continually heal and create healing spaces. Purpose, what matters to you. As you think about the way you may have introduced yourself originally, and after kind of hearing these deeper thought questions and hearing Dr. Angelou's reflections of who exactly you're bringing into these spaces, the question of what matters to you is now different. Think about that. What have you learned about yourself just in that moment, in that shift? What does it feel like to be seen for your purpose? Belonging in ethos. Who am I? But something I didn't have the words for, but yet could feel, shifted inside me. What do I want to be? The first seed had been planted. Viola Davis. Belonging isn't the same for everyone, and we must be self-aware. Nafisa, if there are comments in the chat, please let me know. Belonging and joy. Leveraging your identity and prioritizing your wellness and working with your purpose intact. It allows you to connect. You must know and show who you are. Showing up authentically will help you prioritize your wellness and create joy for yourself and, in fact, for others. Work within your purpose and be reminded that your purpose is indeed not your productivity. It is your ethos, your values, your values. Those 4 deeper questions, in fact, help you to define or redefine what we know to be as our purpose. Authenticity builds trust and psychological safety, thus cultivating wellness and joy. Belonging is a leadership competency. When we see this again, And when you start to think about these questions and move through them in a deeper sense, you're starting to realize who you are and that your values, in fact, matter. Your needs can only be met with these intact. Authenticity.
So, interrupt you again. Just wanted to let you know you have 5 more minutes.
Okay. Authenticity is defined by psychologists as the act of expressing one's true self, leaving that code switching behind. And it has been shown to have numerous psychological benefits. For instance, authenticity increases well-being, is associated with more positive social relationships, and can act as a buffer against interpersonal conflict. That's a citing from Forbes. Who are you? What motivates you? What are your rooted beliefs, and which ones do you need to clutch onto, and which ones do you need to set free? Your influence, what holds you accountable? These are the big questions that will help you self-discover and heal. What opportunity do you have to leverage your ethos to prioritize your well-being while fostering unity? Wellness and belonging are essential. Reimagining and prioritizing authenticity create that wellness and belonging. Psychological safety, foster trust and build cultural competency. Discover your ethos-driven leadership. Start by defining your purpose. Tell your story, and don't just tell it, tell the truth. Practice vulnerability and transparency so the you that you are can in fact be seen. Be inclusive, build equitable practices and policies, and build for humanity. These are some of the things that we've talked about, but the undertones of belonging are psychological safety, ethos, and storytelling. I'd love to take, if there are any questions or reflections, we have made it. But as we kind of depart from this space, I want to offer you your greatest gift, which is you. You are your greatest gift. And the process of healing starts with recognizing exactly how worthy, valuable, and needed you are. Thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you. I would love to answer any questions, hear any comments. I did stop sharing, so I think I'm going to try to see y'all. Can you all see me? I can see you. Any questions? Any thoughts? Thank you, Nafisa. Thank you all for being here. Amazing. Yes, of course. Of course. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And I will just quickly, I will find my, I think actually my LinkedIn profile and everything is linked on my profile here, but I would love to connect with you, to continue to have these conversations. Do I have any books or publications you can, so we can cite you? Yes. So I do have a guided journal, which is behind me. It's called the Ethos-Driven Leadership Journal. So that is one of them. The frameworks and things that are that I referenced are part of this journal. So again, that's the Ethos-Driven Leadership, and I'll put that in here. Journal. And then otherwise, I am all over LinkedIn, IG, and other spaces. You've seen me maybe in Wall Street Journal, and some Forbes Black. And if you're at Forbes Black, I'll see you on Monday maybe. But thank you so much for this time. And I look to continuing to connecting with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nafisa, for your moderation. I appreciate your assistance as we've worked through all the tech and everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was a really good session.
Thank you.